Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rick Moore, past master of Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, senior warden for Fort Worth 148.
This is Gabe Yagish, junior warden of Fort Worth 148.
This is Evie Kirkendall, master of ceremonies, Fort Worth 148.
And we have a special guest tonight.
Hello, this is Jon Ruark from the Patriot Lodge, number 1957.
It's so nice to finally have you on, Brother John.
Pleasure's all mine.
So, and I don't know if you guys were the first. I don't think y'all were the first Masonic podcast.
Oh, no. Give credit to at least the oldest, longest standing Masonic podcast is Robert Johnson's Whence Came You. He got the idea from a guy who called himself the Digital Freemason, who did launch a couple episodes. But it was right that transition when everyone was kind of moving off of blogs and into the early podcast days.
Gotcha. I would still consider you one of the Masonic Podfathers.
It's been 6.5 years, so yeah.
Podfather?
Busy. Podfathers.
There you go.
Man. I'm
That
gonna
is
make
now
you an offer
officially
you can't
trademarked.
refuse.
Every time you use it, you owe Fort Worth 148 50 cents.
That's pretty steep.
Someone's got to raise dues.
Exactly. There we go. That's our lodge fundraiser. Exactly.
So no, it's good to have you on. I know listening to your show and others was a big inspiration for us to start something here in the great state of Texas. So it's good to have you on.
Yeah, congrats for everything you've done. 4 seasons already.
Yeah, that it goes fast, doesn't it?
It flies by. It's really weird. Yeah.
All right, so before we get cracking, let's do our discussion question, which I thought was kind of fitting. So our fraternity used to be one of the leaders in integrating technology into society, like typewriters and slide projectors, which seems silly now, but that was a big deal back then. We were some of the first using them. Why do you think we've fallen behind that curve now?
I'm glad you asked that. It's something I'm academically interested in, both for my profession as well as just looking at Masonry as a whole. And it really comes to complacency, I think. And it's not a bad thing. It's just we got comfortable, right? We got comfortable with the status quo. We had that burst of membership in the late 40s, early 50s, and really just kind of rode that wave as long as it could take us. And so, we used to just be able to have, if you wanted to have a lodge fundraiser, you just stuck a sign out front, opened the doors, and had a pancake breakfast, and you had more than enough, interest and money and candidates coming in. And so that is also true for technology as well, that, you have to think about, where does society live now? Like if what's the virtual equivalent of opening your lodge doors? Everyone's online, especially now, right? So we have an opportunity, to be honest. I'm a glass half full kind of realist and say, man, this is a great opportunity for Masonry to open its quote virtual doors and be a positive face in uncertain times.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because a lot of what cats are looking for, we got going on inside there.
Absolutely. Right. You want someone you can call on, count on, depend on. You need that sense of relationship.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very, very rare and hard to find nowadays.
It also seems really interesting considering that there are a lot of jurisdictions. I say a lot. I've heard of a couple, a handful that are actually clamping down on virtual existence within the Masonic realm, which I think is exactly, in my opinion, I share your opinion that this is not the time to be doing that, because for myriad reasons that I'm sure we might discuss later on in the episode. But it just seems so counterintuitive to be doing the opposite of what would be best for both our members and our organization during this particular time.
You're absolutely right. Just to build on that, so I also have like a master's degree in computer security. So like I understand the fear of the headlines of, well, Zoom is insecure. Well, no, people were leaving open conferences, right? You wouldn't blame the car if you left your keys unlocked and a laptop on the front desk, the front seat.
Yeah.
And yet we just have this emotional reaction to something that could be very secure and very helpful to candidates, to mentors, and all that. And I think so that's the tech side, but the emotional side is to kind of answer back to the why is tech one of our struggling points. I really think that we have a hard time shifting to this online digital world because most of us don't know where the fraternalism ends and the secrecy begins. Some grand jurisdictions have that in writing, that these are the secrets.
Yeah.
And then there's ones like Virginia that does not have that written down. And so if you were to ask, I've had candidates come up to me as I'm mentoring them. They're like, okay, so what are the things we really can't say? I'm like, well, I'll tell you how I interpret it. And then, but there's a lot of gray area there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Rit, I think,
Rit, do we want to actually bring in the Grand Master's decision regarding esoteric work that was just released in Texas today?
I don't care. Y'all can talk about it.
It's exciting.
What's wrong with it? Yeah.
So, one of the things and this is something that we were sent. Of course, by the time this episode is released, any references to today are not accurate. But this is how for any of our listeners from other jurisdictions, I'm sure you guys have similar processes. If you don't, in Texas, we have our Constitution, and someone can ask the Grand Master a question on the Constitution, and his interpretation is legally binding, right? He can't change the Constitution on his own, but he can interpret it. So he's, in a weird way, he's like our version of like the elected Supreme Court, kind of.
Nice.
Anyway, so question. May the esoteric work of Masonry be studied by telephone between two brothers known by each other? Answer. Yes, the two brothers must know each other as Masons and must assure each other, as far as practical, that the telephonic, quote, voice only, unquote, conversation is secure and is between these two brothers only. No other electronic or digital video or audio platform, service, or device is permitted. Signed, Paul Underwood, Grandmaster 2020. So,
that was an interesting one.
So, like, tech-wise, the way that I interpret that is that we can't do that through Uber Conference or Zoom or anything else. A straightforward phone call is the only option that we have available. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
on a secure line?
Yeah, I was going to say on the phones that can be tapped, or are we talking about are Bluetooth connections allowed? Because Bluetooth is a weak signal. Oh, and what happens when you connect to a Wi-Fi point where your phone switches to Wi-Fi calls, which Wi-Fi can be hacked?
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what I was about to say, because I'm I'm looking at the decision already right now on Facebook, and the comments are already blowing up.
I'm one of them.
Exactly that subject, simply because of how kind of nebulous the idea of a voice-only platform is. It seems that, and this is no criticism of
not at all.
Of the Grand Master or anything going on in the grand jurisdiction of Texas, but it seems like this decision was written by someone who really doesn't have the best understanding of what it means to be a voice call in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
That all of those issues that we just discussed in like 30 seconds are part and parcel of this odd conversation where does the line between a voice call and a Zoom voice only medium happen?
Yeah.
Because you can also do video without video. You can also use all myriad of internet phone calling. Would a FaceTime without video be appropriate? Because that's via your phone. So you end up with this very kind of, even in trying to be as specific as possible, you end up with these very nebulous gray areas that end up just being more confusing than they are elucidating.
Well, and let's be honest, when that was written, it was probably with the understanding that telephone means the actual telephone that's plugged into the wall, not the digital forms of telephony that we have today.
I read a history book about landlines. It's fascinating.
I remember I was a child and we had a landline. Yes, back in the day.
No, that kind of boils down to why I think we haven't transitioned into technology, is because I know if you go look at our Grand Lodge of Texas, the past Grand Masters, you go back probably 20 years and before, it's kind of hard pressed to find an old guy on that wall as a Grand Master. It used to be younger men ran our fraternity. And I say younger men, they were in their 50s, mid 40s. You know what I mean?
You would get some guys that were in their late 20s or 30s too, every once in a while.
You'd have some outliers that would be really young. But I mean, there would be, and don't get me wrong, there'd be sprinkled in some older gentlemen as well. And it's not a knock, because, there was a good mix to where the younger guys would bring in that technology, and we just hadn't had that for so long. Yeah. It's been a long time.
If I could take a stab as to what I think drove this particular decision, I think it was all the media reports about Zoom bombing and people interrupting. Yes. And it really does come down to user security, right? In any security system, the users are always the weakest link. And if we would have just taken the time to educate our brethren about, here's some basic steps you can take to make sure you don't have someone just intruding, I think that would have gone a long way in preventing this particular situation.
Well, the good thing about this is it's a Grandmaster's decision, and that can easily be remedied by, them having the chance to be educated on it, taught about it, whatever it takes, and ask the question again. And that can change overnight, So with what he had to work with and as quick as it had to come out, I'm thankful we got the telephone option at least, and I understand where he's coming from, but there's probably, because there is some advantages to being able to see the guy's face when you're working on catechisms.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And in order to be able to see who else is in the room as well. Like, yeah. There's a very big advantage to being like, oh crap, like, hey, your wife just walked into the background. I'm gonna put this on pause real quick, and we're just gonna chit-chat about normal stuff. Right. But let's talk security. Right.
Let's talk security.
One of the big concerns behind, say, Facebook Messenger or, WhatsApp or whatever, Skype, these companies own your data.
Yep.
They actively mine your conversations and stuff for commercial purposes, right? Like any well, hell, even Microsoft's Cortana system. If you have Cortana activated on your Microsoft Windows computer and you are able to give it Alexa-style voice commands, Microsoft uses your vocal data to improve search results and stuff, among other things. They just claim ownership of those audio files. Can be kind of scary, right? So we know for a fact that Facebook, Windows, Skype, you name it, is not secure. And so we can say, hey, there's a Masonic argument for saying we cannot teach the work over these. However, and not to sound like a crazy person, right? But we do have to take into account the fact that, like, the United States government does listen to phone calls of ordinary people, right? Not everybody's getting listened to, but a lot of people are getting listened to by the NSA. And this is something that has been proven and documented, and it's in the newspapers, right? And since at least 2001, the NSA has been, the U.S. government has been monitoring telecommunications network using, whether it's AT&T or Verizon or whoever, they've been doing basically dragnet surveillance of domestic communications, which means that, in the simplest terms, the government is listening to you on the phone. That's the end-all, be-all. Any phone conversation that we have is not secure. So why do we make a distinction between, hey, Masonically speaking, telephony is secure versus digital calls are unsecure? Because the reality is that one is private companies listening to you, and the other is a federal agency listening to you, and all of it is Masonic work that can be easily found online. So, what's the deal, guys? Yeah. Now, I'm not judging Most Worshipful Underwood's decision on that. I'm just saying that, we really need to have a serious conversation about what actual real security means in a voice conversation or a video conversation. Because right now, we don't know what that means.
Okay, so let me take that one step further. And this is something I'm really passionate about, and I think it's a fascinating thing to think about. Do people lose their minds when you start talking about technology? Because, someone could do this, someone could do that. Technically, yes. Someone could walk by while you're in your car working with a brother as well.
Yeah, I mean, they could be listening in a myriad of ways.
Yeah, they could be literally walking by your lodge room and put their ear up to the window. And I've traveled to many lodges where the secretary has a wireless microphone installed at his desk.
And that is a vulnerable point of access, right?
It is.
Yeah. And so I'm not saying stop using all wireless mics. I'm just saying let's be realistic about this thing, and let's really balance the access versus the risk. Risk management is a really hard thing to do because we are emotional creatures. And yet, if you think about, the time that you would call somebody to work on some ritual work for, a half an hour, out of all of the other calls that are going on in the nation at that time frame, right? You are just a little tiny, a little pebble in the ocean that is telephony. Mm-hmm. So again, the attack vector is there, yes, unless someone is actively trying to target Masons and Masonry, which fortunately that hasn't happened in recent times. Then we're really the risk vector is very low.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, for us to be specifically targeted, it could happen. But I mean, in the end, what are we guarding that's already out there?
Yeah,
it's like the empty treasure chest.
Well, and there's also the reality that our fraternity, for better or for worse, is skewing older and older and older. At our grand communication, we here in Texas, we had a really big presentation about exactly what that demographic is going to look like over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Are you talking about the Grand Treasures report?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was brutal.
And I don't think that people really understood how brutal that report really was.
It was a good report too, but it was like I walked out of that with like a sense of shell shock.
Right, knowing where the numbers numerically and otherwise are going. I think that there's definitely a certain sense that the older we get, the more disconnected from technology we become, and that's just a fact of aging. Yes. We become less interested in the newer, fancier things. I mean, I'm in the generation that still thinks that Snapchat is kind of stupid, and the TikTok thing, I'm like, why bother?
Yeah,
my little brother has introduced me to TikTok, and I've got to say, as a passive consumption item, I'm fascinated. Creating content, I don't even want to try.
Well, and that's the point. And we're talking about people who are now in the generation above us that are even skeptical of things like Facebook and Instagram and the internet in general.
Yeah.
And so we've got those sorts of people that are now pulling the levers of power in our Grand Lodges, at least here in Texas, for the most part. And it's not a criticism so much as it's just the reality that we're dealing with. It's kind of like we're the generation that we're talking about right now among all, 5 of us. We're the people who are going over to grandma's house to help them figure out how to hook up a wireless printer.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the most frustrating experiences of my life was receiving a long distance phone call from my grandmother in Costa Rica and trying to figure out how to troubleshoot her printer in another country.
And that's exactly what our generation is dealing with. So it's kind of like, not only are we dealing with this in terms of our personal lives, being the person who helps mom or grandma set up her new smartphone, for which she just got the first iPhone of her life, or smartphone, or however you want to attribute it. But now we're dealing with it in Masonry too, where we are having to be the people who are pushing the people who are in charge to be like, hey, why don't we have a Grand Lodge, purchase presence on the Grand Lodge website? Why can't we purchase things online? Why can't we, do all of these things that would be relatively simple to do? And we all know that they would be relatively simple to do. But yet we're having to push them kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And I think that that's part and parcel of this whole conversation about why it's difficult to have Masonry catch up to the 21st century, because we have people that are still living in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the true secret of Freemasonry is, how do I convert to PDF? But
so true. And obviously we could rail on this question for quite a bit.
We got a little sidetracked on that, although I'm okay with it because it was.
Oh, it's intriguing. And that's the thing, is that it leads into such broader problems or things, adversities that we're having in our fraternity that we've got to look at, because the generation that's been in charge has been in charge for a long, long time, and they've kept it running. But it's, the newer generations are finally coming in to where it's time to let them have a little say to where we can get things turning the way they should, with technology and stuff like this.
Right on.
So, John, let's get into some personal questions before we get into the main stuff. So, tell us a little bit about yourself outside the Masonic lens.
Okay, who am I? Let's see.
Who am I?
What would you say you do here? Husband, father of almost 5 kids. I have 4 beautiful daughters, and finally a son, future Lewis, on the way.
Hey!
Yay! So,
Hey.
next month we'll have another addition to the household and back to sleepless nights.
Oh,
nice.
congratulations!
Yeah, so I'm definitely excited. Just kind of a techie guy. Good solid Christian background, and went to school for engineering and ended up doing a variety of things in the techie world, specifically for IT stuff for the federal government. But currently, I'm helping teach government folks how to think like entrepreneurs, basically how to do agile, lean startup, all those fun things, surviving in like an entrepreneurial spirit in the federal government, which is fascinating when everything I've been kind of setting people up for the past couple of years, like as soon as COVID-19 hits, like crap, all of our plans have been busted. How do we think differently? Well, I'm here to help.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's a pretty good and efficient selling point.
Yeah, exactly. Now you need me.
So, when, why, And what lodge did you join?
When, why, and which lodge? So, grew up, my first exposure to Freemasonry, I didn't have any family members. My first exposure to Freemasonry was season 6 of The Simpsons with Homer the Great.
You're kidding.
And-
that was
and
your
it's
first exposure?
And I'm like, I got to sign up for this. Where do I sign? And didn't think much about it, but, it left an impression. Then my senior year of high school, my largest scholarship that I got was the local lodge, which I didn't, again, have anyone related to me, but I thought that's kind of interesting. These guys support education. So I held on to that idea and went to school in Baltimore, a block away from the Scottish Rite building, didn't even know it, and ended up settling in Northern Virginia. And then after we got married and kind of got my career started, I started to look around for this Masonry thing. Again, being in a new state, I didn't have any social network, right? I had no people I could call on at the last minute or if I got a flat tire. And so I started to look around, noticed a coworker had a Masonic ring on. I hit him up. Actually, I accosted him in an elevator and said, "Hey, are you one of those Masons?" "Yes, I am." I said, "I've always thought about joining." The next day, he pulls me aside, takes me to lunch, and has a petition at the ready. So this was in 2006 timeframe, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I joined because of the mystery of it all. Like, these guys they seem to be okay guys. Don't know what they do. I hadn't done any research, and I'm kind of glad. And fortunately, he just stuck me in like the local lodge, and it was diverse enough of age, backgrounds, people's like country of origin. Everyone it's a very diverse lodge, very active lodge. So I lucked out. I really did luck out, and ended up joining my mother lodge, which was Herndon Lodge number 264 in Herndon, Virginia. Got my EA degree in January of 2007. So
Nice.
that's how my journey got started. Got raised as Master Mason in August of 2007, and it's been a wild ride since then.
Yeah, I was going to say, you hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So what offices have you held?
A few, now that you've asked and I had some time to think about it. Let's see, I've done the Worshipful Master thing. That was exciting. I also have done the York Rite side in Virginia. We're a little unique, where our capitular degrees and our Royal Arch degrees are under the same grand body. They are not separate organizations. They are together. So, which is kind of nice, because if you are the high priest of your Royal Arch chapter, ipso facto, you are also the thrice illustrious master of your capitular body at the same time.
You're talking Gabe language now, not mine.
Check. Yeah. So.
Just loud York Rite noises coming from this corner of the room.
Yeah.
Where are the swords? I need more swords.
Ah, God, swords and Jesus.
Yeah, and here we do something. I mean, it's really kind of up to the individual chapter and council, but most of them usually do. If you're high priest, you're also thrice illustrious master, but they're not required to do that.
Yeah.
Nice.
The only ones that I've seen where your capitular stuff and your cryptic stuff is detached, they're not really detached. Like, you have the ones that I have seen that vary from that are you serve as high priest 1 year and then you serve as TIM the next year. So basically, like, they bump you down one spot in the cryptic council so that you serve the next year as TIM. So, like, you have two guys presiding over the two different bodies at the same time.
Question: are they two separate dues?
Yes, technically. So, but you
Yeah.
pay it. So you could set up a secretary for your chapter and a recorder for your council. You could do this if you really wanted to, for whatever reason. I don't know why you would, but generally speaking, you'll hand a check for however many dollars to your secretary recorder, and it'll be the dues for both bodies, but they will technically set their own separate dues. Like my chapter's bylaws state X number of dues, and my council's bylaws state Y number of dues, and together I just pay X plus Y per year to the same person who handles it for both bodies. And then they just kind of juggle. Like the chapter will pay the council. Sometimes the council pays the chapter.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And it's less like that in other states. In Texas, it is part of our, I think it's part of our capitular constitution that if you petition a Royal Arch chapter for the capitular degrees, you must also petition a cryptic council for the cryptic degrees. And that's just kind of the requirement. That's how it goes. So you can be a Royal Arch Mason and a Select Master, but not a Knight Templar, but you can't be just a Royal Arch Mason functionally.
Right. Yeah.
But in
And we
other
had to
states,
propose-
this is not a requirement. So they operate a lot more independently.
Yeah, and we had a proposed resolution at the last convocation assembly to change that, but it was withdrawn before it was even voted on.
Yeah.
Interesting. So did that finish your list, John, or did we interrupt with York Right Talk?
I guess the only additional thing would be past sovereign master of an AMD council. So that's kind of fun. It's very laid back, which I enjoy. It's all of the education of Masonry without all the drama and politics. So that's kind of cool.
AMD is a lot of fun.
But it sounds cheesy, and I used to roll my eyes when I heard people would say it. But really, the best title is brother, right?
Amen. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yep. No, that's for sure. That's the one I prefer the most. It's when everything's running smooth when they're calling you brother. You're not there on any official capacity. It's just good times. Hey,
and
brother.
Here's why it's not cheesy. Because if you see someone in an airport with a Masonic ring, you're not gonna right away be like, well, I can't, I don't trust you or I don't respect you because you're not a past Grand Master. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, cool, a brother. Like, that's awesome.
That's exactly
Where
right.
are you from? You don't care about any of those titles. So that's what the fraternity is all about.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So what do you see as the biggest strengths and weaknesses of the frat?
Boy, that's an interesting question. It's a very multifaceted, complex question, but it's one man's opinion. I've had the pleasure and opportunity to kind of travel around and see other jurisdictions. And what I see that's working really well is everywhere I go that I see a lodge that's doing very well. It's very passionate. It has the passion in its members, right? You can tell these brothers eat, sleep, and breathe Freemasonry. And so when you have that passion of its members, all the members, they have a sense of a joint purpose that works really well. I see that's something that, again, once you see that spark, that light in people, you can tell that they're in it to win it. And so if we could keep leveraging the passion of the members who are in the fraternity, the ones who really get Masonry, who live Masonry, that is a very unique value proposition that our fraternity has over other, like Elks and Rotary and all that.
Yeah.
Another thing too is the tradition and history, right? That the strength, we have that strength that we can say George Washington went through this, Ben Franklin went through that. That we are proud. We are so proud of our lodge buildings and of this guy being secretary for 35 years. And we just eat that up. And so I think that is a good strength of, again, this shared purpose, this community aspect of our fraternity. And then the last thing I'll say is, dare I say it, ritual. I used to hate ritual, especially the first time learning it, as any new candidate knows.
Yeah.
And I used to think, great, ritual's cool and all, but the education is where my secret sauce is. That's where I'm at. And yet you can't have good education without solid ritual.
Yeah.
Ritual is what's, again, another thing that separates us apart from any other fraternal or social organization in the world.
It is one of those things that I always see grow on people. because I know it grew on me for sure. But the longer you are in Masonry, the more you start to understand the importance of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It's what makes us different.
Okay, so that's glass half full. Let's talk about glass half empty. Again, what do I see as weaknesses of the craft? And the number one weakness that I would say is that we have a failure to address the cause. And what I mean by that is we have the declining membership that has been on a steady slope since 1959. And we've tried things, but we're not solving the root cause, whatever that is. So we're not giving it the full attention. That slope, you may have seen some presentations I've done. Some of them are on the interwebs about the peak of about 4.5 million Masons in 1959, and then it's been a steady slope downward to where we are today. If you were to extrapolate that curve and keep drawing that line out, we hit zero in 2040.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully you and I will live longer than that. However, the trend line is there. We're not seeing the trend line move up at all. Lots of great anecdotal stories of, oh, this lodge is doing great. This is doing great. Awesome. The numbers aren't showing it yet. And so we really need to step back and really address the elephant in the room. And that means that we're going to have some tough decisions, and it's not going to be about, can you do esoteric work over the telephone? We're going to have bigger, harder conversations about, like, who are we? What value are we providing in the 21st century? And how do we become relevant and still keep our identity?
Yep.
It's deep, but that's a weakness that we need to man up to in the near future, in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Another thing related to that is, because we're so proud of tradition, which was a strength, we also lack the ability to experiment. And what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about innovations in Masonry, okay? All I'm saying is that we need the ability for lodges to easily get chartered and get dechartered very quickly. We need the ability for people to try technology. We need the ability for creative, like, dues collection processes. We need all of these things to be experimented. And when a jurisdiction has like 300 plus lodges, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let them try different things for the sake of the fraternity, for the better of the whole. And then we'll see what works and what doesn't with data. And so we just need to see the non-esoteric parts get experimented with to try to see what works and what doesn't. And then the last weakness is that it's been my experience that there rarely is a structured educational program after the day after you get raised as a Master Mason. And so, and then people say, oh, well, Scottish Rite's the University of Freemasonry. And then you get there and there's still no structured educational program.
Yeah.
They'll just hand you morals and dogma and kick you in the butt and say, good luck. But what I mean by that is, if you don't have a great mentor, and I'm going to give a shout out to all the great mentors who actually help pick up that newly raised Master Mason and get to work. But when you're raised as a Master Mason, that's the first day of the rest of your life. And so this is where you should learn to continue to grow and improve yourself in Masonry. And there are a ton of resources. There have been Masonic books that have been published and out of print more than we'll ever know.
Yeah, that's the truth.
We don't have a good structure at any grand jurisdiction level, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, that actually guides a man to become better in Masonry. We take good men and make them better. Is it after they pay their dues when they're raised, or is it through a continual support system of not just the fraternal aspects, but the intellectual aspects as well, the spiritual aspects as well?
Do you think that we fundamentally need something like that? Is that something that's necessary, or is it untenable to try and implement that, or even undesirable to implement that?
So I met with a bunch of cool cats down in North Carolina a couple months ago, and we were trying to brainstorm, like, how do we fix that problem, that specific problem, right? We're not going to solve everything. Can we fix the specific education problem? And the way when we walked out of there, we kind of walked out of there with a guiding principle, a North Star, which was basically our goal, our vision of the future would be that every Master Mason should know where to find good education, if they so choose to find it, right? So there are some that are going to be supper club Masons. We love them. We need them to pay their dues. We need them to help fix, do lodge repairs, and just be there as a shoulder to cry on if you need to. And if you are there for the mystery of it all, if you are there for the esoterics, if you are there for the philosophy, we also need that path to be very clear should someone choose to go there.
So in a sense, you bird dog them. Because you don't show a bird dog where every bird is, but you teach them how to track it.
Yes. Oh, I love it. That's a great analogy. Yeah. So we don't have that clear path that I haven't seen. And again, there are always exceptions to the rule. There are always some jurisdictions that are doing better at it than others. I know. Gotta give a shout out to North Carolina, the Grandmaster this year, and the Middle Chamber program they've set up is fascinating. It is a quote unquote official Grand Lodge path for people who want more education. So I love that experimentation aspect as well. But it's the why behind why we're here. And so if we can continue to improve that, we have a lot of data that shows that the younger generation joining, because if you really think about it, we have like some Gen Zs, right? After the Gen Ys, after the millennial generation, we have Gen Zs joining now who don't trust the system, don't trust the man, and yet, saw National Treasure and want some aspect of that mystery of it all. And they're coming into maybe deflated expectations. So let's not lose those guys if they're looking for that. We have data that they are looking for that and not finding it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an uphill battle, but I think I've been a member since 2004, and things are definitely trending in a different, better pattern, in my opinion.
Great.
Whether that works out in the end or not, because I know education is easier to find than it was in 2004 to 2010.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of great programs out there started, and lodges doing stuff like that, and we'll see if it catches hold.
Yep.
So I want to get into some discussion as well about the difference in our jurisdictions. That's always an interesting topic. So the process to join, how old do you have to be to join in Virginia?
As of an edict in 1995, it's now lowered to the age of 18.
95, huh? So you guys were on the ball with that. Do y'all remember when we did that? That was like 2012.
I don't remember.
It was more recent than, because that's almost 20, 30 years. Interesting. Do you think that had a big effect? Do you see a lot of 18-year-olds joining?
No, with exceptions. Brent Morris would say that men join Masonry after they're done playing softball. That's his little punchline.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
When their kids are old enough to be wholly independent, maybe not out of the house yet, but you're in your mid to late 40s, you can trust your kids, home alone. Now you have some free time, and that's still stereotypically when men join Masonry.
Yeah.
Now the reason I added with an exception is one of the lodges that I chartered, the one I'm past master of, is the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, which is an academic lodge. So we focus on the academic community at George Mason University, and we try to quote unquote recruit. We don't recruit, but what I mean. Focus on our marketing to younger folks who are.
You make yourself widely and clearly available.
Big neon signs. Join here.
Yeah, be like, hey, we're the Masons you heard about. John, do you feel that obviously, so you said, most guys are joining the fraternity, kind of as they're entering middle age, or, however we want to define that. Middle age is a weird nebulous term now. Do you feel that there is a net benefit or a net detriment to lowering the age for the candidates, not necessarily for your Grand Lodge?
To the age of 18?
Yeah, like, do you feel that from a candidate's perspective, they may have benefited from waiting longer to join, or do you feel that they are benefiting from being able to join earlier if the need be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would answer it by saying, when did you become mature?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
27
Last week.
I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Can I
was gonna
say
yeah.
Can I say not yet?
Right.
Still working.
So we have the legal definition of you become, a full-grown adult according to the state that you live in, or the country you live in, at the age of 18. But does that mean you're ready for the responsibilities that come with that? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I will say that I was a very wise, beyond my years child, and if I had Masonry introduced to me at that age of 18, I would have joined probably at 18, and would have soaked it all in. But I know I'm probably an exception to the rule, and yet, so we should always guard the West Gate, right? We should always make sure we know the candidate, that not just that we know that they haven't gone to jail, but also know that they are worthy of the mysteries and secrets we're going to trust them with. And so I like keeping it low, but I also like being able to say, you're not ready for it yet.
Yeah. I like that.
Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you think about it in some traditions, right? Like if you think about like traditional rabbinic Kabbalah, right?
Mhm.
Like
40 years.
historically, you weren't allowed to join until you were 40, right? And so that kind of says a lot. And it kind of goes with what you were saying about, hey, like a guy's old enough where his kids are, semi-independent, So there's a lot to think about. It's like, well,
When did you guys stop learning about Masonry?
Ooh.
So the opposite is
never.
also true.
Yeah.
So the
I
opposite
think
is
all
also
those
true.
questions also kind of ask or beg the inversion of that coin, in that if we keep the age low, or whatever we decide to do, or if a grand jurisdiction decides to have a low age, wouldn't we want Freemasonry to be there in the formative years of one's maturity?
Right. Exactly where I was going with that. Yep. Okay, when you went through your degrees, you certainly remembered everything and you never had any questions, right?
Exactly. I absorbed everything perfectly.
So the longer we have these tools available to us, the more we can soak them in, think about them, right? So we it's not a numbers game. It's about can we inspire a spark in someone, even if they don't get it, and they haven't studied the Talmud and really figured it all out. No, that's not the point. The point is to improve yourself in Masonry, not get it all right from day one.
Yeah.
There's a conversation I had recently about mastering something versus striving for mastery continuously and for your entire life, right? And how when we frame things in a discussion of, hey, you have to master this, it can be extremely limiting, right? But when we frame something of, hey, you should strive to master this perpetually, that becomes a very different conversation that encourages that growth mindset.
Oh, I love it. Oh, you're speaking my language. As a facilitator too, there's a term that we love to use. It's a Zen Buddhism word called Shoshin, which means beginner's mind, right? Have you ever had like beginner's luck when you're playing a game of cards, right? And you're always getting all the good tricks, and you're like, man, this is fun.
Sure.
Because you're not trying to be an expert at it. You're just trying to enjoy it. And so it really summarizes down to a quote that says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few.
Mm.
Ooh, that's
I
pretty
like
good.
that. Yeah. No, that does explain beginner's luck. A very, yeah, that's using logic.
Yeah,
That
so
also explains a lot of past masters, too.
It so does.
so basically the trick
Absolutely.
there then is to harmonize an expert's knowledge with a beginner's mindset, right?
Nailed it.
How do we apply
Oh,
that? How do we apply that to Masonry?
Get rid of the egos, man. Get them out.
yeah, there's no doubt, because I can think of myself as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Mason, and then you start getting ground up in the meat grinder. How do you get back to that phase of, and it's ego. You start mixing in your ego, and it
Dude, if I were Grandmaster for a day, all titles are null and void. We don't have
strike all
titles anymore.
titles.
Your brother, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's. I mean, we joke about it, the grumpy past master, but there's some truth there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it is a cycle, and there is a purpose for it all. If you can do it in an unegotistical way, I would say it would be much more effective. God, that's a trick, though.
Yeah, there's just to pull that nerdy thread for a second. There is a term in the business world called intellectual humility, and it's about stop trying to know all the answers and rely on your team, your lodge, your brothers to help find the answers. And so, really, it's about asking more why questions instead of coming to the perfect solution.
Yeah. Good
Well,
stuff,
here's
man.
Evie playing the devil's advocate.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, I know, right? Everybody hold on your britches. So don't we run the risk, though? Because it seems like everything that we've been talking about, and me including in this conversation, has just been kind of dumping on people of the older generation. However, there is a certain amount of wisdom that comes with someone who is aged. There's a reason that cultures have revered and worshipped their their ancestors and their elder generation for the wisdom that they hold. And I think that we run the risk of saying, oh, these old grumpy past masters are just succumbing to their ego. But at the same time, a very strong argument could be made that these past masters have been there, done that, and know what it takes to keep Masonry going. And we might point to myriad failures in which, like lodges aren't doing as well, or membership is down, or what have you. But is that really their fault, or is it just circumstances culturally that are influencing and playing out in our lodge as a microcosm of what's going on culturally in the macrocosm?
Go for it.
It's ego again. I mean, because I can think of several mentors and past masters I had that did it without ego, and it was very effective. But there are a good handful out there that do mix in that ego, and it just makes the whole thing toxic.
And it goes towards what I was saying earlier, right? Like you have to harmonize the experience of the experts with the mindset of the beginners, right? And I know for a fact, Evie, what you're talking about, right? There is real value to the experiential knowledge of past masters. When I was sitting in the East in my Royal Arch chapter and council, there were many, many moments where I had a past presiding officer, not always the same guy, right, approach me and go, Gabe, I need to talk to you. Let's rethink this. Have a more, have a deeper conversation about this, because I came in with that, firebrand attitude, burn everything down, and having that experiential knowledge of past masters is something that I desperately needed and I'm so glad that I was open to receiving at least some of it, you know. So yeah, no, this it's a huge caveat, right? Like you have to be open to that knowledge and to receiving it.
Well said.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
it seems to me like the trick is to find a synthesis of innovation and that past wisdom.
So you're saying we should balance between the pillars.
Right. Exactly.
Oh,
Someone write that down. Someone write that down.
It's somewhere in there.
I was gonna say, I think there's entire mystery schools written on that subject.
So, John, when it comes to going through the degrees, how long does that typically take?
So Virginia's becoming more unique because we're one of the few mouth to ear states where you do work with a mentor. We do not write anything down. We do not have a cipher book. And so your progress in Masonry, we have a catechism, and you have to have some memory work that goes between you and a mentor before you can advance to the next degree. So we don't have any prescribed times. I know some jurisdictions have, like a month between the degrees, and it just becomes a rote process of, okay, see you next month and you'll get your next degree.
Yeah.
Not so much in Virginia. And so that is both a blessing and a curse. Hopefully, if they have a good mentor, and there are icons in each lodge that will work with many candidates, but it's up to the individual's pace, and that's I like it for what it is, and you just have to be careful with that. So they did try to cap it on the back end, and they said that really you shouldn't be taking longer than 6 months between your degrees. And so if you are, for whatever reason, then all you need to do is just write a dispensation to say, hey, my candidate lost his job, or he's moving to another place, or he's expecting his 5th kid, so he needs some time to take a break from Masonry for a little bit. As long as there's a good reason, most DDGMs will just sign away on that. Like, okay, cool, we'll give him another 6 months.
Yeah.
So, first question: your DDGMs can sign dispensations?
I don't know about candidate progress. Usually it's for lodge like meeting nights and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay. In Texas, ours can't do that.
Interesting.
Then, second question: what do you find most challenging about the candidate process in Virginia?
The most challenging, having gone through it, is patience. I submitted my petition like in early October, and then you had your November meeting when it got laid over, and I got investigated, and then we do December elections across the state. So they were all like, well, we're not gonna, even though you're voted on, you're gonna have to wait a bit. Like, what do you mean wait a bit? I'm ready to go. Like, yeah, but we're not, because we're changing officers and blah 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 blah. And so it taught me patience, I'll give you that. And yet just the transparency of the thing through the process. Like, I'm a process oriented guy as well, in case you couldn't tell. And if I can have a Domino's pizza tracker where I can see every stage that my pizza's in, why don't we have that for Masonry?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
but that's technology in Masonry that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So I did have a question, because you did bring up the catechism that the candidate's required to do. In Virginia, is the determination of whether someone is found ritually proficient in the catechism, is that set at the individual lodge level? So is it up to the lodge, or is there some kind of code that the Grand Lodge has that says this is the minimum requirements that you should have?
That's a great question. The perfect way is what we call long form. It is a long catechism, right? It's the up to half-hour long back and forth with a mentor. That if you are doing the long form, then you must present it in a tiled lodge, and after you present it, hopefully proficiently, then the lodge will ballot on your proficiency to allow you to proceed to the next degree. And sometimes it could be a little awkward. Is this guy going to make it? Right? Hopefully their mentor wouldn't put them in a situation where they're not ready, but I've seen some close calls. So that is the best way just to put it. Then there's also the alternative form. We have an alternative form, also known as the short form, where as long as you understand in your own words what the morals and lessons and secrets are of Masonry, you can kind of do the shortcut. Full disclosure, I was a shortcut. I thought, in my young age of 26 joining, I thought, I don't have time to learn all that. Wish I did, because then you have to know it all anyway when you're master of the lodge. And so you can kind of do the short version and speed things up. Does it make you any less of a Mason? Absolutely not. And there are reasons where people, they may not just be good for memory work. I've worked with a couple people as a mentor where their brain just could not wrap their head around it. Does that mean that they would not be a great asset to Freemasonry? Absolutely not. So you have to do it on a case-by-case basis. Those short form versions, it's really left to the master's discretion to advance the candidate through the next degrees.
Interesting. You got long or short. Would you say most take one route or the other?
I don't have enough data on that, so I'm not going to
Gotcha.
speak out of turn.
Gotcha. No worries. So when it comes to the lodge itself, how many times a month do you guys meet, or have to meet?
Right. So according to Virginia laws, we have to meet monthly. My mother lodge met every other Monday, so that was basically twice a month, plus degree work in between those. So basically, you could count on Monday there was something going on at the lodge, no matter what day of the what day of the month it was. Yep. If it was a Monday, there was something at the lodge. There's pros and cons to that as well, but the bare minimum is monthly, with the exception of, say, an academic lodge called the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, that had approved bylaws by the Grand Lodge to go dark. We're, I think, one of, if not the only, we're one of very few lodges in the grand jurisdiction of Grand Lodge of Virginia to go dark in June and July, because there are no students at the school in June and July. If half of your officer line goes back home out of state to visit their family, it's a little hard to open lodge.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know a lot of, some jurisdictions go dark during the summer, and I see advantages to that and also cons to it, but it was interesting to see how that worked there.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there, in Virginia, is there a commonality you see in successful lodges?
The same thing I said earlier about the strengths. It's all about a healthy lodge has healthy members, has active members, and it's not about heroics. It's about a team effort. It's not about the officers. It's not about the egos, right? That's what I've seen personally.
Gotcha.
So there's a common root cause to all that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to Grand Lodge of Virginia, what's the total number of lodges and members that make up the Grand Lodge of Virginia?
Right. So just as of a couple of years ago, there was about 330 lodges, and I think that has gone down over time. And we have about 30,000 members. Also have been going down with the same rate of decline as the national membership.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Do you know what your peak was as far as membership?
Question. I do not.
Interesting.
I wish I did.
So history. I mean, it's much older than us down here in Texas. What's kind of the short history on the Grand Lodge of Virginia?
So back in the 1770s, there was a little thing called the Revolutionary War. Don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah, there's a tea party or something there.
Yeah, really good tea. And so, colonial masonry is just fascinating as a study. I highly encourage you guys to If you're interested in history, look up how like colonial masonry was, because it was a hot mess. I do a whole presentation on it's amazing masonry formed at all, because everybody was doing their own flavor of masonry in colonial masonry.
Yeah.
And so, for example, of the lodges that formed the Grand Lodge of Virginia, they were under 5 separate grand jurisdictions. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So like, could you imagine like all of us just getting together? We're like, we don't recognize each other, but let's just all agree to just come together and have a Grand Lodge. Like that would be unheard of today, because we're so wrapped around this whole thing called recognition. But back then, you're a brother? Cool. Like you didn't care. So it was formally constituted, the Grand Lodge of Virginia, on October 30th, 1778. And its headquarters was in still colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, because that's where it was near a port city, right? So Williamsburg and Norfolk, those are all like, that's where the heart of the membership was, because it was all colonists coming into the main port through the Atlantic Ocean. So there were 9 official charter lodges that came in, but there were many more that, for whatever reason, mostly because they were on the opposite end of the state, hadn't quite made it over to form that compact. Then in 1784, they actually moved a little bit more central. They moved from meeting in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is again more shoreside, and moved it inland to Richmond, Virginia, where it stays today. Another little fun fact, George Washington was invited to be the first Grand Master of Masons in Virginia. But the war wasn't over yet, and he was a little busy.
Be like, hey guys, I got something on my plate. Y'all cool if I attend to this in the meanwhile?
Yes. BRB, LOL. So that's unfortunately he did not take that honor, but he was almost our first Grand Master.
Almost. Okay. Wow. That would be cool though.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting stuff. So let's chat about the podcast for a second before we wrap this up. The Masonic Roundtable, you kind of mentioned a little bit. So who started it, when, and why?
Sure. So yeah, we've been around for a little while. I was eating up Masonry in the early days of the Millennial Freemason blog and the Winding Stairs podcast and the Whence Came You podcast. And what I found was that many of these were one person's voice, and it was just very unidirectional, right? It was no different than turning on the news. And while awesome, because dude, there's an amazing amount of education, I wanted to have more of the after lodge feel, right? Just hanging around, just like what you guys are doing, just jaw jacking, enjoying Masonry, sharing experiences. And at the time, I was also following a weekly video vlog called Droid Life, an Android podcast. And these guys were in different locations having a conversation on video about Android phones. So I said, well, why don't we just do the same thing, but for Masonry? So I literally friend requested, Nick Johnson and Juan Sepulveda and Robert Johnson. They didn't know me from anybody, but
yeah,
you had to try. I said, hey, crazy idea. What if we all got together and just did a video thing? And they're all like, we'll try it. Like, what do we got to lose?
Oh, famous last words, huh?
Yeah. So this was after my year in the East. So I had like the past master syndrome of now what do I do? So
yes.
So I was master in 2013. We started the podcast in February of 2014, and because I wanted more education, and then found it by keeping myself up to date on this. So so we tried it, slapped together a Facebook page, and next thing we know, holy smokes, it just kept growing organically. And so we said, how about you want to meet next week? Okay. And how about next week? Next thing you know, next week became 6.5 years. So,
oh my goodness. So what do you enjoy most about the podcast?
Holding myself accountable. that you've got to deliver something. And this is back to my whole agile background. Like, always deliver, even if it's crap.
Yeah.
Because it's better to deliver something than to deliver nothing.
Please, I'm starting to feel personally attacked.
That's the truth. So what do you see as the biggest challenges of it?
Is meeting that cadence. Absolutely. We well, there are times where life gets in the way. We all get busy, but we want to make sure that we're trying something, getting topics, reaching out to special guests. Sometimes can be a challenge, but it's we're in it to win it. So there we are.
Yeah. No, when you get the product on the other end, it seems a little easier than it is. Hey, those guys are just getting together talking. That's no big deal.
Oh,
And
gosh.
you don't see all the, oh my God, my mic isn't working. I'm over here cold sweats. Like, here we,
We're feeling it. I can definitely empathize.
Yes.
That there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that comes into making it look easy.
Absolutely. Amen. So, anything new on the horizon for TMR?
It's just really just keep going. That we haven't run out of things to talk about. We always said that when it stops being fun, that's when we'll hang up the apron. But until then, we're going to keep going. We want to experiment with all these different things. I'm just fascinated right now. Like, my current obsession is like all this online masonry that's happening. Online, untiled, philosophic, esoteric education that's going on, and so I'm happy to see too much education. Dare I say it? Because people have to make choices. Do I go to that Zoom meeting or this Zoom meeting because they're at the same time?
Yeah,
That's a great problem to have. Holy smokes!
It is. I really feel like we've opened a can of worms because it's needed to happen for so long. I mean, we talk about, the sacrifice we make with our families. Well, why not Zoom and cut out the drive time?
Yes, love it.
There's an hour and a half at home.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a new normal coming out of all this.
I hope
hopefully.
So. I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to a question that I have real quick, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Please.
So, Brother Ruark, you and Robert Johnson co-authored a book called It's Business Time not long ago. I think it's been, 2 years now?
About 2 years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where you kind of adapted several corporate models for what might be useful in Masonry. I'm curious as to your perspective about what this pandemic it means for the changes that you see at all levels in Masonry. What do you see the new normal for Masonry being after the world kind of like wakes up from the virus?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
Well, no one ever accused me of the lightweight questions.
Yeah. This is great. So there's a mentor in the startup community. His name's Steve Blank, and he's kind of considered the godfather of this whole entrepreneurial lean startup movement. And he put out a blog post in late March that says, if you don't think your business model has changed because of of COVID-19, you need to go back and reassess. And that is true for every industry, every business, and dare I say, every fraternal organization as well. And that could be both positive and negative. And so how can we adapt? Can we adapt is the real question. And how do we adapt will be that. And we're seeing little baby steps of like doing the work over the phone. Like I'm happy about that. We did kind of spend a lot of time about the details, but dude, that's amazing. And that's more than we can do in Virginia, by the way. So there's a lot of incremental adaptations that Masonry is going to have to take. Will some of this be accelerated? Don't know. And then again, as we just talked about, if I can get education for free without traveling to lodge and hearing how the bills are paid, am I going to go to lodge anymore?
And you see, that's
dangerous proposition there.
That's been my big question too. Not only that, but that's the younger audience. Probably the people who listen to this podcast and to your podcast. and to TMR. But there's also I see it as the other end of the spectrum, where what's going to happen when those older demographic Masons are not real comfortable going out in public because they're in the group that is at most risk for, the harshest effects of this disease, if you will. So what is their expectation of Masonry going to be at the end of this as well?
Yeah, I'm not an alarmist, right? So I kind of take things one day at a time. Let's just focus on taking the next step instead of like projecting out. But you'll see all the, the headlines that'll say, "Oh, we're going to be quarantined for another year."
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, let's assume that's true. Let's assume that we have to ease in society where not everyone can just knife switch, cut over, and like, okay, we're all back to work, and then there was no problem because now we're going to get reinfected all over again, right? So think about how that will impact Masonry. So will Grandmasters allow 8 months from now, a year from now, that maybe only the officers can meet to get their business done? And maybe Grandmasters a year from now will say, we're still not going to do ritual stuff, but some jurisdictions already have. You can do business meetings virtually, but you just can't do esoteric stuff virtually. So there's going to be, I'm cautiously optimistic about the acceleration of some of these quote unquote innovations, or I'll just call them experiments, that Masonry is going to have to adjust to because of the demographic.
Well, do you see an opportunity or perhaps a reevaluation of what Masons are looking at in terms of where they meet as well? Because I know that a huge percentage of a lodge's, overhead expenses is actually the buildings in which they meet. Mm-hmm. So now we're finding that lodges are finding ways to do business outside of an actual building. I mean, is there a place for, a reevaluation of how we allocate our real estate assets, if you will?
Yeah, it reminds me of a meme of Maury Povich reading the lie detectors, and it goes back to the business world, and he says, you said that that I couldn't be effective teleworking, but the fact that I've been able to do it for the past month determined that was a lie.
Exactly, and that's kind of exactly my point, is that we're all discovering that a lot of the things that we assumed were, vital, that we go into the office, or, we have to be here for 40 hours a week, it's just garbage. Let's just say what it is. And I'm just wondering how it's going to affect, my thought is and questions have been revolving around how it's going to affect Masonry moving forward, not just for, attendance of young people or attendance of old people, but also like, what are we going to look at in terms of our actual needs assessments? So it's just fascinating.
More about needs assessments. What do you mean by that?
Well, do you actually need a temple that takes up a full city block?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you? And historically, maybe yes, but realistically, to do the work, do you need that? Do you need that overhead expense? Mm-hmm. Do you need a building at all? Is there other opportunities for us to meet other than what we've traditionally been doing in a physical location? Mm-hmm. Are there ways to integrate teleconferencing into the lodge so that brothers can sit in the comfort of their own home and meet with brothers that are in a building in a Zoom-like environment, where it's both virtual and in person? I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of questions out there about what Masonry is going to look like at the end of this, and I'm just interested in some other people's perspectives from other jurisdictions that are seeing it differently than we do here in Texas.
Mm-hmm. I will say that Virginia is slower to adapt than other jurisdictions. We're right next door to the Grand Lodge of DC, which is all about adaptation and trying new things, and they're very progressive. And we have in Virginia a little bit more of a we'll take our time, we'll figure out, we'll see how this thing works out kind of attitude to Masonry.
Yes, very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So you got any final thoughts before we wrap this up, Brother John?
I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. This has been a blast. You guys are great brothers, and keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate the conversations, the intellectual discussions about technology and masonry and the psychological behavioral impacts that go behind this. These are like really good conversations we need to keep having. So keep it up.
Amen. Will do. So if they want to listen to the podcast or get your book, how do they do that?
Sure. So you can search for It's Business Time on Amazon. And again, you'll hear Robert and I nerd out about lean and agile as applied for running a Masonic lodge. And we really enjoy putting that together. That's also an Audible. If you don't like to read, you can listen to it as well. And then we also have the podcasts that, again, I've already given the plug to Juan Sepulveda's podcast, the Winding Stairs. Robert Johnson, of course, has his Whence Came You, and the MasonicRoundtable.com gets you all the links to Facebook and YouTube, and on any podcast app you have.
Sweetie McPeety. All right, gentlemen. Quote of the week this week is from brother Franklin Roosevelt. Knowing what's right doesn't mean much unless you do what's right. And I think that's easier said than done most of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Gabe, if you want to throw out some contact info, we'll wrap this bad boy up.
Sure. Folks, if you would like to learn more, you can find us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. And I hope to God we get out of quarantine fast enough. But if we're not stuck in quarantine, on July 25th will be the date of Texas MasoniCon 2020. And you can learn more about that at texasmasonicon.com. That's texasmasonicon.com.
All righty, gentlemen. I have had a blast. This was a great one. Thanks again, John, for coming on. It's definitely been an honor having you and discussing Masonry with you. Hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future.
The honor's all mine.
All right, gentlemen. This is Rip Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Yagish signing off.
This is Evie Kirkendall signing off.
This is Jon Ruark signing off.